With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yoma Daf Yud Zayin. We're going to be going back to the stira between the Mishnah in Talmud and the Mishnah in Midrash regarding the location of the Lishkas Hataloim. And as we learned 2 days ago, that in Masechta Talmud, the Mishnah writes that the Lishkas Hataloim is in the northern western corner, what we are calling here the top left corner, which happens to be the area that is non-sacred in the Beis HaMoikat. In the Mishnah in Midrash, we learned that the Lishkas Hataloim is in the southern western corner, which what we are calling in the bottom left corner, which is in the Kodesh part of the Beis HaMoikat, and we are looking to make a reconciliation. In other words, yesterday, the whole daf yesterday was to point out that it's taka machlokas tanoim. And as we successfully proved, that the entire Masechta of Midrash follows generally, or especially the anonymous Mishnahs, Mishnayos, and follow the Shita of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. And here we will learn that indeed we don't have to make this into a machlokas tanoim, but we successfully reconcile these two Mishnayos. And on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis, the Gemara is going to go back to the Mishnah when we learned that the Kohen Gadol has the first right to offer any chelik in a korban, as well as the Kohen Gadol always has the first right to receive any portion of the korbanos. So we're going to be learning details about that. Not only does he have the right to receive a portion of korbanos, but that goes to animal korbanos, that goes to the bread korbanos, so the Kohen Gadol can receive, if he wants, as we'll learn, one of the two breads that are offered on Shavuos. The Kohen Gadol can receive a large amount of the lechem hapanim breads, but we're going to have a whole machlokas tanoim about exactly how many lechem hapanim breads can the Kohen Gadol, so to say, take before all the other kohanim make their division. And really that's going to be linked to a machlokas that we have in Masechta Sukkah between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim as to exactly how was the lechem hapanim breads divided to begin with. Now there were groups, right, the 24 mishmaros, watches, that they actually changed guard during Shabbos Kodesh. The lechem hapanim was taken off the shulchan on Shabbos. It was divided amongst whom? So Lokula Alma, it was divided both amongst the mishmar that is incoming and with the mishmar that's outgoing. The machlokas tanoim is it 50-50, meaning 6 and 6, 50%, 50%, or does the incoming mishmar receive a larger amount, and we'll explain why. And accordingly, we'll explain a machlokas here that we'll learn at Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis as to what is the maximum amount of the lechem hapanim breads that the Kohen Gadol may take. Chevra, let us start on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. We left off on the second line from the top of the Amid. So Nachamal in Masechta Talmud, the Mishnah writes that the Lishkas Hataloim, that the chamber in which they would keep the living lambs, from which the Kohen every morning is going to take out one lamb for the Tamid Shel Boker, the other for the Tamid Shel Beinu Arbayim. So the Mishnah writes that it is in the northern western subchamber. Mishnah Midas writes it's in the southern western chamber, says Rav Ada Bereid Rabbi Yitzchak. Hi, Lishka, there is no machlokas tanoim, that's a great picture, but everyone agrees to there's one chamber. But the one chamber is not mamish in a corner, the way we have been learning until now. But what is it? It's Aktsuye Mekatzia. It's a chamber that extends towards both corners. Extending towards both corners means it's not all the way in the northern western corner. It doesn't touch that corner. It doesn't touch the southern western corner. It's removed both from the south a bit and it's removed from the north a bit. It's on the western side, but it goes in the southern and in the northern part of the Beis HaMoikat. However, and therefore, if someone were to enter the Beis HaMoikat from the north facing south, being that it doesn't touch the corner of the north, so he would say, it's towards the south. He would say it's in the south, and actually that is the Mishnah in Midas. The Mishnah in Midas writes it's in the southern western corner. However, if someone were to enter from Darim, now who would enter from Darim? It mamash fits. Masechta Talmud is speaking about the actual avodah that the Kohen would do. He would enter the chamber to get a lamb. Now where is he entering the chamber from? He's entering it from the Azara. He's about to do the avodah. So he's entering it from the darim, from the south. So since it doesn't touch the southern corner, it goes towards the northern side. Therefore, for him, it looks like it's in the northern western corner, which is exactly what it says in Masechta Midos. Furthermore, the Gemara says, don't think that it's somewhere in between the north and the south, not touching either corner. Another detail, Umistabra says the Gemara, that it was mainly in the south. It still fits the answer. It never went all the way down to the southern corner. So when someone looked at it, he would call it, if you enter from the south, he would say, it's in the north and western corner. But relative to the two sides, it was mainly in the south and less in the north. Now, why is that important? The Gemara is going to bring the following proof. Let us now focus on another one of the four chambers that are mentioned both in Talmud and in Midos. Now, in Masechta Midos, if you remember, the Mishnah, speaking about the four chambers, gave the exact location of each of the four chambers, not only by the Lishkas HaTaloim. In Masechta Talmud, the Mishnah only spoke about the location of the Lishkas HaTaloim, as it says it was on the northern western side. The Mishnah mentioned three other chambers. This is in Talmud. The Mishnah did not explicitly write where they are. What are the other three? The other three that we mentioned was, you have the Lishka of the Chaisamais, you have the Lishka of the fire, in that order, and you have the Lishka of the Lechem upon them. Based on the premise, based on what we learned yesterday, that when we are going around, we go derech yamin, because that's the rule. That means we go counterclockwise. The Mishnah in Talmud did give one location of the Lishkas HaTaloim, and then the other three, Chaisamais, fire, and Panim. So going in the direction of counterclockwise, we're going to have another stira, a new stira. It's going to come out, it appears that where is the chamber of the Lechem Apanim? Again, there'll be a contradiction between Talmud and Midos. And let's read it inside. And all of this will be answered as long as we accept that the majority of the chamber of the Taloyim was mainly in the south. Not in the corner, not all the way to the bottom, never touched the top north. It was on the side going both north and south, but it was mainly in the south. And that will answer the question. So first let's speak out the question. We have this stira. Okay, and I can speak out the contradiction. So again, if you have pictures, that will be very helpful. But Nachamol, in Masechta Midos, it says explicitly that the chamber in which the Garmu family made the Lechem upon him was in the southern eastern chamber. Southeast, again, if we're placing north in the top, southeast will be the bottom right. And we spoke at that in Midos, the beauty that both items that are used in the actual avodah, the lamb, the bread, kodesh kachim, they are actually kept in kodesh. It even fits. But before the explanations, Midrash writes explicitly the lechem upon him was in the southern eastern corner. And now let's go through, like we mentioned, what we mentioned. No, this picture is the wrong picture. What we will try to extrapolate from Midrash, from Talmud. So like this. Clearly, the Mishnah writes in Talmud explicitly the only direction that the Teleh was in the northwest. The top left. Now, if we're going counterclockwise and we're going through the seder of the following three that the Mishnah mentions in Talmud, Chaisamais, right, Moikat, and Lechem Apanim. So let's go counterclockwise. So if Teleh is in the top left, in the northwest, so then the Chaisamais is in the southwest, so then the fire is in the southeast, and the Lechem Apanim is in the northeast. That's a contradiction. It appears from Masechta Talmud that the chamber of the Lechem upon him is northeast. In Midos it says it was in the southeast. That's a contradiction. And on that, what was the answer? Second to last line, Umishaninon, Amar Rav Huna Berei Rav Yeshua, that Marko Chashuv Derech Yamin, that in Masechta Midos we are going as we normally do, counterclockwise. And Umarko Chashuv Derech Smoil, and really in Masechta Talmud, the chamber of the panim bread is also in the southeast. The reason why, when you made the cheshbon right now, it appeared that it's in the northeast. That's because you went counterclockwise. But in Midrash, we don't go counterclockwise. We go clockwise, which is called in the Gemara derech smoil. And if you go clockwise, it's going to turn out that it's in the southern eastern corner. These are the words that we have. The Gemara is going to tell you that unless we accept that the Lishkas Hataloyim was more towards the south, even when you go clockwise, you still have a problem. And let's just talk it out in Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Now, Amrad Bishloima, that the Lishkas Hataloyim, which is the only Lishka whose location is mentioned explicitly in Talmud, is primarily B'ma'arav is the Raimis, is primarily in the southern western corner. All right, even though the Mishnah writes it's in the north, but it's more in the south. Then, Hainu demetaretz lechem apanim alechem apanim. Now you'll have a good answer. How will we have a good answer? So I'm going to talk it out. So let's go again. Putting the tle in the southwest, and now, Chevra, we are going not counterclockwise, but we are going clockwise. The next chamber that's mentioned in Masechta Talmud is where they kept the choisamis, where they kept the seals. So going clockwise, if Tele is southwest, even though it says northwest, but if it's really southwest, so then the choisamis is northwest. The next one mentioned, clockwise is the fire, the Beis HaMoikeh, that's northeast. And the final one, the Lechem HaPanim, is going to be southeast, which is exactly what it says in Masechta Midos. That the Panim chamber was southeast, it mamish answers the question, there is no stira. But if you're going to say that the main part of the chamber was in the northwest, even if you're going to go clockwise, we still have a contradiction. And let me just speak out the problem. Because if we begin placing the Teleh, as it says, in the northwest, and let's go clockwise. So the next one to the right, we're moving with the clock, is going to be the northeast, the Chaisamais. The next one, the fire, is going to be southeast. Southeast is where it says in Midos was the Panim chamber. The chamber Panim is going to come out was in the southwest. Why did you have a stira? So here we so to say, we resolve two things. Number one, even though it says in Talmud that the Taloim was in the northwest, it was really primarily in the southwest. It was more towards the south, which is great. And therefore, based on the premise that Masechta Midos is not going derech yamin, it's going, yes, clockwise, that will take away the stira exactly where was the chamber of the Lechem HaPanim. It's going to chap that everyone is in consent that the Lechem HaPanim sub-chamber was in the southern eastern corner, Elalav Shmamina, that mainly B'ma'arav is the Reim is Havoy, indeed Shmamina Gevaldik. And now the Gemara asks, okay, very good, also is good and fine. We do have a rule that kol pinoi sha'at poina, right? Lo yiu elo derech yamin, which means lemizracha. Guys, this rule is not only in the Beis Hamikdash. When a person gets called to the Sefer Torah, by the way, there we say go to the quickest route. But if it's equal to go to the right or to the left, you always go derech yamin. You always go derech yamin. When we take the Sefer Torah towards the bima, we go derech yamin. When the person takes it back after a Volotzion, back to the Aron HaKodesh, always derech yamin. The way we dance around the beam is derech yamin. I mean, this is a klal. So the question is, why would Masechta Midos go in the opposite direction? Which means lemizrach. So why would the Mishnah Midos go clockwise? It should always be counterclockwise. Answers the Gemara, when you are actually doing the avodah. Like we mentioned, in Talmud, it's all consistent. The Kohen is entering the chamber. He's walking there to get a teleh. And normally, again, like when the Kohen goes on the Beis HaMikdash, whenever he went up the ramp on the Mizbeach went from south to north. When he walked up to the ramp, there are always exceptions. But the rule is, he made a right. He went to the east. That's because he's doing the avodah. But a Masechta Midos, we're not speaking about a Kohen doing the avodah. It's only chushbena ba'almahu. It's only counting. So when you're counting, it doesn't matter which way you count to. But hold on, what will be the logic behind that? I know we're not speaking about actually walking or doing. Then you got to always do it derech yamin. But counting also. Why would you not stam? Why would you count counterclockwise? So I was thinking, that perhaps when you count numbers, so if you go 1, 2, 3, the more you count, the farther away you get from 1. By us, Hashem is Echad. If you go the opposite direction, you're getting close to God. Because still we have I just want to point out like this, that there is one other area where it appears that we also go derech smoil. And that is when we write. Lashon HaKodesh. I know that the old Goyish languages, or many Goyish languages, we go from the left to the right. But think about it, when you write Lashon HaKodesh, you're going also derech smoil. Even though every letter itself, if you think about it, the letters, when the Sefer begins writing a letter, think about writing Aleph, you're going from left to right. You're going derech yamin, in the letter itself. So there is going to the right, but when you go to the next letter, you're going to the left. That's also an anomaly that has to be explained, that at least we have the words of Chazal, that when you're only cheshbening, then it doesn't matter, or maybe dafka we go to the opposite direction. Just one final other application of this, when we light the menorah. How do we light the menorah? I know there's a machlokes about it, but we mamish go right, double right. First of all, we put the candle on the right, on the most right side of the menorah, the first night. It means we begin on the right. Not only that, the moment we go into the latter nights, where we go mahadran mina mahadran, so we're lighting 2, 3, 4, 5, we begin lighting it on the left side, dafke, not only because it's the newest candle, but because that will afford us the possibility to go to the right. If we would have begun always on the right, then we would be going like we write, which is the exception. We don't want that exception. That's only for writing. Okay, weiter. Chevra, the Gemara is referring back to the Mishnah. Even though the Mishnah began speaking about the preparation that the Kohen does during the Shiva Simei HaMaluyim, Mishnah says that Bachlal, the Kohen Gadol, Makrev Chelik Barosh, V'noitel Chelik Barosh. So the Gemara wants to say that the Gemara is going to bring a brayso that makes one nekuda before the details, and that is as following. When the Kohen Gadol has the right to do the service before any other Kohanim, first of all, we spoke out according to most Achronim, that is true even if the lottery was already done. Can you imagine? And the Kohen was Zoiche Begoidel. He's about to do an avodah. If the Kohen Gadol wants, he says, I'm doing it. Now, how much of it can he do? We'll see all of it. When he's taking a portion of a korban, how much can he take? So the Brais is going to differentiate between a korban yachid and a korban sipur. That will be the neshama of the whole sugya until the Mishnah. Then we'll learn details. And then when it's a korban yachid, if the Kohen Gadol wants, he can take all of it. So if a yid is bringing a korban chatos, now I know the owner doesn't eat any of the meat, but the eat is divided amongst the kohanim of the base of that mishmar. If the Kohen Gadol wants, he can take all of the meat of the chatos, all of the meat of the asham. But regarding karbanos tzibur, here we'll see, he cannot take the whole, he can take either half or a little bit less than half. So let's read it inside. Tana Rabbanan. Keitzad makrev chelik beroish. For example, oimer oilazu ani makrev. And you know what? He can do it all. Mamish, just like he does it on Yom Kippur. Likewise, minchazu ani makrev. Keitzad noitel chelik beroish. Now when it comes to the hakrava, he does all of it. So similarly, when it says in the Mishnah that if he chooses, he can take first, how much? Same thing. Same thing by a korban yachid. That oimer chatazu ani oichel. Chatazu ani oichel means if he's able to, and obviously you have to make sure there's no noiser. He can eat all of it. Asham ze ani oichel. Now the Baraisa gives examples of a korban sibur. So the first example is the 2 chalois that are offered on Chag HaShavuos. So here the Mishnah says, "V'noitel chala mishnei chalos." Here you see, he cannot take it all, but he can take half l'chayda. Or here is going to be what we're going to have to explain: 4 or 5 breads from the lechem apanim. How do you explain 4 or 5 breads? Even if you're going to say that he takes half, what's half of 12? It should be 6. What's 4 or 5? We're going to explain that. Rabbi Yomer, always 5. Also not 6. Always 5 out of the 12. Shenemer, as it says, and this is a pasuk in Emor, for Hoysa, the pasuk in Emor is speaking about the lechem apanim. That for Hoysa li'adon novanov, the lechem apanim is divided li'adon novanov. What do we see clearly? that it's not like a Korban Yachid that Aaron can take it all. No, the Torah wants it to be divided amongst Aaron and his sons. This is a raya that by our Korban Sibur, he gets to take 50%. I know we're going to come back, so what's the 4 or the 5? At least this explains the one of the two chalas. Mechza li'aron or mechza l'banov. End of quote. And now let's unpackage it. So asks the Gemara Haguf Akash. Omrat noitel chala achas m'shtei chalois. Now, what does that appear? What is the ending of the Braisa? The Braisa says, mechza li'aron or mechza l'banov. Clear, these are the words of Rebbe, half and half. So the Braisa begins by saying he gets one challah, not less than one entire, a full 50%. So the opening of the Braisa follows Shitas Rebbe. The Amar that he says palga shakal. Problem is the next clause in the Braisa that's speaking about how many breads of the lechem upon him. There were a total of 12 breads. The Mishnah, the Braisa says 4 or 5. Arba oy chamesh mimaisa lechem upon him. Now, before we explain why 4, why 5, but not 6. So l'chayda that will come like the Rabbanan, and here it's understood that the Rabbanan don't accept Rebbe's shita that the Kohen Gadol gets to take a full 50%. He can take almost 50%. It has to be less than 50%. So Hassan the Rabbanan, the Amar loy shakal palga. And then the Braisa again quote shitas Rebbe, Ema Seifa, Rebbe yoimed lo olam chamesh. So it's not going to flow. It's going to come out that the Reisha, the Seifa, follow Shitas Rebbe, and the middle clause follow Shitas Rabbanan. Amar Abaya, yes, exactly. Reisha umitziyasa follow. No. Answers Abaya. I'm sorry, no. The Reisha and the middle follows the Rabbanan. What do the Rabbanan hold, my friends? That the Kohen Gadol by a Korban Sibur cannot take a full 50%. He has to take less than 50%. Well, that will explain the 4 and the 5 versus he cannot take 6. But why will he take one of the two chalois? Isn't 1 out of 2 a full 50%? The answer is yeah, because here there's no option. How would the Kohen Gadol receive less than 50%? By us breaking one of the two chalois, and you can give 90% of it to the Kohen Gadol, and then the other broken part, breaking apart, giving the Kohen Gadol only a piece is not respectful. Not for the challah, and not for the Kohen Gadol. Why did Rabbanan and the Prusa, the Lavurach Arol Meisva to give something broken to our Kohen Gadol? So there is no option. The only option is giving one. Okay, so now, Daf Yud Ches. Let's go with this. So the Reisha and the Metzia follows the Rabbanan that holds that the Kohen Gadol by a Korban Sibur cannot take a whole 50%, a little bit less. Okay, so now the question is, Umay Arba Umay Chamish. When will, like Rashi says, Mai means Masai. So when will he take 4? When will he take 5? So to go further, we have to share Balpeh, the following machlokes that we mentioned in the intro that we have in Masechta Sukkos. What do we have over there? We have 24 mishmaris. Every mishmar serves for an entire week. And then the next mishmar comes in. I mean, throughout the year, generally, the mishmaris will be serving 2 full weeks. Aside of, on every Yom Tov, all of the Kohanim come to the Beis HaMikdash and they all partake in the part of the Avodah of Yom Tov that's unique to Yom Tov. Or it's parenthetically, even on Yom Tov falls out in the week of a given mishmar. All of the regular karbanos, like the Talmud in the morning, the Talmud in the afternoon, that's not divided amongst all of the mishmaris. That goes to the mishmar of that week, but the Yom Tov Avodah is divided amongst everyone equally. And before we get to Yom Tov, as we'll get to in a few lines, Shabbos is when they would change guard, and Shabbos was the day in which they would take off the old lechem apanim breads and put on the new ones. It was the lechem apanim breads that were already sitting on the shulchan for a week, in which first they would offer the bazichen of frankincense, which was just like its kmitza, and then we would have 12 loaves of bread. How did we divide it? So that's the machlokes between the Chachamim and Nebi Yehuda. And what is the machlokes that Chachamim hold? The Chachamim hold that the division is equal. 12 loaves are divided. Each mishmar will get 6. Now, based on that, the Chachamim hold that the Kohen Gadol, it's a Korban Sibur, never gets a full 50%. Full 50% would be 6. He can't get 6. What's less than that? 5. That's the 5. We're going to see in a moment when is the 4. But before we go further, just to make clear that Rabbi Yehuda holds that really only 10 of the 12 breads are divided. It doesn't mean the other 2 breads are God forbid, disposed of, chas v'shalom. No, he holds like this, that being that the mishmar that came in, they come in the middle of the day, they come in the middle of Shabbos, they will end up closing the doors that were opened by the outgoing mishmar. In other words, that they're going to be told to finish something that they didn't start. We'll speak more about this in Sukkah. So the logic is, since they are doing, so to say, extra work, even though next week they won't have to close the doors at the end of the day. We don't look at it that way. They're doing a part that they did not begin. They deserve extra compensation. So 2 of the 12 goes to the incoming mishmar. But we don't call that a division. It's removed from the 12. They end up with 7. I get that. But then the 10 is divided half and half. Which means, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you view that only 10 are being divided, so half of 10 is 5, which is what Rebbe says. Rebbe who holds you always get half, he says 5. 5 is half. But if you were to hold that you get less than 50%, then you would get 4. But let's read it inside. So li Rabbanan, that holds that nichnas noitel sheish v'yoytze noitel sheish, the incoming mishmar gets half of the lechem hapanim breads, 6. The outgoing gets half. And v'schar hagofes de losois, to get extra compensation from the lechem hapanim breads to the incoming mishmar, because they have to be compensated by the fact that they are closing the doors. Well, they're doing many things, but they're doing something that they did not start. Loi, the Rabbanan don't agree with that. So therefore, let's go mishtei mesrei baya miflag. But you want to divide the 12. We're saying that the Kohen Gadol should get half, then plus a little bit less than half. Batzir chadam ipalga is chamish shekel. That's the 5 that the Rabbanan say. Now, Rabbi Yehuda that holds that you don't divide the 12. De facto, the incoming gets 7, but we don't even view it as a division of 7 and 5. We don't view it that way. We view it as they're given 2 as a compensation, and 10 is being divided. Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar Nichnas Noitel Sheva. Why do they get 7? Because Shtayim, 2 of the 7 is not from a division. It's an additional compensation. B'schar hagofas delosos, it's for them closing the doors that they did not open. And v'yoytze, the outgoing mishmar gets 5. In other words, we view it as 10 of the 12 are being divided. So chamesh me'eser boy miflag, if he would get half from what's being divided, he would get 5. And Rabbanan l'shita some that the Kohen Gadol by tzibur gets less than 50%. So batzir chadam ipalga v'shagel arba. So the lashon in the brayse that the Chachamim say that he gets 4 or 5 is another way of this brayse saying, I'm not going into the machlokes and sukkah. It could be Rabbi Yehuda, it can be Rabbi Chachamim, whichever shita you follow, he's either going to get 4 or 5. Now, by the way, what does that mean? That this is all according to Abaye, that when Rebbe says, Lo oilam chamesh, and Rebbe is the one that holds that the Kohen Gadol always gets a full 50%, just it means that the Rebbe knows that Rabbi Yehuda is correct. It's the Chachamim, the Tanach, they're not going into that debate. They're not ignoring it. They're saying 4 or 5. Rebbe argues with the Chachamim in 2 things in our brayse. Number 1, Rebbe says the Kohen Gadol by a korban sibur doesn't get it all, but he gets half, and he quotes that pasuk la'arin ulavana 50-50. He gets a full 50%. Number 2, the Rebbe tells the Chachamim, I will side with Rabbi Yehuda in the machlokes and sukkah. I know that it is 10 that's being divided. Ubemeila la'olam chamesh. Rava Amar. Rava goes even more. Not that Reisha u'mitziyas Rabbanan. Rava holds the entire braysa following Shitas Rebbe. And as we just mentioned, here is where Rava agrees with Abaya, that Rebbe holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Now, what does that resolve? It resolves the first din in the braysa. The first din in the braysa regarding tzibur, not regarding the yachid, not oila, or not asham chatas. The first din was that the Kohen Gadol gets 1 challah from the 2 challahs. Perfect. There are 2 challahs, no one debates that. Rebbe holds that the Kohen Gadol gets 50%, he takes 1 challah. Now the question is, what does it mean by arba oy chamesh? Ma'ela my arba. L'choira, I get it that Rebbe follows Rabbi Yehuda. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, that holds that 10 are divided. And according to Rebbe that holds the Kohen Gadol always gets a full 50%, it should always be the first white line. HaChamish ba'il mishkal. The Gemara says no loy kashem. And now we're adding another detail. It's good information to know. What is the other detail? What happens, like we mentioned, when Yom Tov is on the Shabbos, then the lechem hapanim breads are divided amongst all of the Kohanim. Leisman the Polak. More than that, what happens if Yom Tov is not on Shabbos, but the Yom Tov falls out either on that Shabbos is Erev Yom Tov falls out on Sunday, which means all of the Kohanim have to be there by Yom Tov. If Yom Tov begins on Sunday, all of the Kohanim therefore have to already be there on Shabbos. Have to be in Yerushalayim, to be near to start working on Sunday. Or even if the last day of Yom Tov is Friday, but so they're working Friday. Shabbos you can't travel. Even if Yom Tov is not on Shabbos, but it's mamash adjacent to Shabbos Chodesh, either the last day being Erev Shabbos or the first day being Sunday, then the lechem hapanim breads also get divided amongst all of the Kohanim. But what happens if Yom Tov is one day removed from Shabbos? That means either the last day of Yom Tov was Thursday, Kohanim were able to go home, but some people stayed. Because since they didn't want to travel Friday. Or if Yom Tov is on Monday, Rashi says. So yes, they could have gone to Yerushalayim after Shabbos, but they wanted to be there earlier. They didn't want to get stuck somewhere. So in such a case, you know what we're going to learn? That from the 12 lechem hapanim breads, 2 breads are given to those Kohanim. Only 2. It's not divided equally amongst all the Kohanim because they didn't have to be there. But we want to acknowledge the fact that they wanted to be, they got there a day early. They stayed an extra day. So 2 is given to those groups. Now how much do you have left? 10. Let's go weiter. We hold, Rabbi Yehuda holds that whatever 2 is going to be given to the incoming mishmer for them closing something that they didn't open. So how much do you have left now? 8. What does Rebbe hold? You get half. Half of 8 is 4. Again, the Mishman HaMesakev is when it's one day removed of, so they were not obliged, but they opted in that. And now we speak it out. So again, 2 is given to those people that got a head start, or they stayed on an extra day. So you only have 10 to begin with, on top of the fact that 2 are given as a schar for the Kohanim that are closing the doors. So really, the division is only from 8. So Mishmayne Ba'ila Miflag. And Rebbe holds that the Kohen Gadol gets to take a full 50%. So therefore, v'shakal arba, mishman hamasakev. So yeah, you have the 2 for the schar of hagafas dolasos, but that's it. But you divide the 10. So me'eser ba'ila miflag and v'shakal chamish. So therefore, Rava says the entire Braisa can follow the sheet of Rebbe. The problem is, didn't you just explain that when Yom Tov is one day removed from Shabbos, and you have Kohanim that are there, then they would get 2 of the 12. So there is a time where there is 4. So why does Rebbe say lo oilam chamesh when it's not true? Sometimes it's 4. So the Gemara says that's a kasha, but it's not a tiyufta. Because you can explain, just to know as a rule, kasha means that it's a good question, but it doesn't refute Rava. Rava is not refuted. Because it could be that Rebbe is adding at the end that this never happened. Lo oilam is not a halacha. Never happened that when the Mishmarais had one day, which is all they needed to make it to Yerushalayim, they would not come a day early. Never happened. It was never needed. Like Keilu La'olam. By the way, it doesn't mean that it never ever happened. It means maybe it happened once throughout the whole Zman Bayesheni. So no, it's theoretically 4 or 5, and now La'olam b'poyel mamish it's 5. That could be the way you understand it. It's Taka Kasha. And with this Chevra, we will conclude, God willing, to be continued.